Mm-hmm. So we are live. I'm here with Nathan. Nathan, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Thanks for coming on. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. What brings you to my channel? How did you discover me and my channel, and what happened there?
Well, I don't have it anymore, but I did used to have a social media, Instagram and Twitter, called Catholic Fitness, and I had I don't know, probably 4 or 5 thousand followers, and before I decided I didn't want to be part of social media anymore. I don't know if you've got it, but I don't. I feel like I remember you following me or finding me on YouTube because I
Oh, okay.
and I saw you follow me, and I've been subscribed, I suppose, for a while. Comment on one of your videos, and you said, "Hey, come on the channel." So
Yeah. So not to take away from you, and I don't want to make you feel less special, but I do have a tendency to invite everybody.
I was like, I just saw you on there, and I was like, I don't know what it was about. One of your videos I was watching, and I was like, man, I said I don't have anywhere near as much knowledge about Catholicism as you do, but
Yeah, that particular video, I wasn't sharing any of my knowledge. That was just a book, Ott's Fundamentals of Catholic Dogma.
yeah, stuff well above that I probably should read more about, but yeah, I had saw that. So I don't know. I don't know how I found you or you found me.
Yeah.
One of the ways. It's been a long
Okay.
time.
So are you still lifting weights?
I'm trying to. It's I just had a kid. I just had a baby.
Ah,
About eight.
congratulations.
Thank you. And they take up a lot of your time. So I'm trying. I used to, probably go 4 or 5 times a week. Now it's probably down to a few. But I just got a new. I bought a new bike today. I've been trying to get into cycling a little bit to do some more cardio. So
Ah,
maybe go from lifting weights to doing more cardio, which I probably need anyways. So
yeah. And you could take your baby on the bike.
yeah, probably when he gets a little bit older, we plan on getting like a tandem bike and then putting like a little basket or a little cart behind, and putting him in that. So
What name did you give him?
Samuel,
Samuel.
yeah,
Nice.
Samuel Evan is his middle name. That's
Nice.
her brother who passed last year actually in a car accident up north, and we gave him his middle name, and my middle name is actual Samuel, and my wife liked it for his first name, so just kind
Nice.
of ran with it.
I just went and looked at your YouTube channel and I see you haven't had anything up for a while. I think you only have one video and it's talking about dating as a Catholic. So it seems to have worked out. You have a wife now. No.
Yeah, at the time it wasn't very successful. I don't know when I made that. I was probably 21 maybe, and I had a hard time because I live in the South in Tennessee, so it's the Bible Belt down here. Certain cities have a large Catholic population for what they are, but not. It's about an hour drive, give or take, for me to some of those cities, and you know, all the women I had dated were Protestant. Some of them were pretty devout, and that was the biggest flaw, I guess, in our relationship was we might get along personally, but we wouldn't get along spiritually. So I knew long term I wanted to eventually go into marriage, and kind of wasting each other's time. So it never worked out, of course.
Yeah, congratulations. So, how old are you?
I'm 26.
Wow. Yeah, I got married at 25, I think. 25, yeah. So, no kids, unfortunately. My wife never wanted it. I'm not sure if she could have any, but it's a bit too late for that now. We're in our 50s. But can you talk to me a little bit about your faith, especially the early part growing up, without going beyond what you're comfortable with in terms of family, talking about your family, but if you want to talk a little bit about how you were raised, what sort of faith and philosophy filled your childhood, early childhood, and then adolescence and onward.
Yeah, so my dad's side of the family, he was raised Catholic he's got two siblings. I've got two uncles. So they were raised Catholic on their side, and my mom, Spanish. So she was raised Catholic, and they used to be a lot more, I guess, devout when we were younger. My mom, took us to CCD and, was raising us, how we're supposed to be typical Catholics. But right about, I guess, it was right after I received my first communion. and I've heard different versions of this, or the way it's supposed to be done. But after I received my first communion, I wanted nothing to do with church, and my mom never forced me to go after that point. And I had a pretty large lapse in between, like, I don't know when I received my first communion, when I was 7 or 8, in that range. I don't know the exact age that kids receive communion, but right after that, between then and about 16, I only basically went to mass for Christmas and for Easter. Basically, I had no interest as a young kid in God and religion and so on. So I turned about 16, and I was homeschooled through high school, and we had a youth group at our local church. And me being 16, I was trying to go just for the women, because I was lonely, and didn't have many friends when I was 16. So said I'll try to join some kind of youth group. And then when I went there, I was kind of going for the girls, but as I kind of stayed, I got actually more into the faith. And when I got to be about 18, I was dating a girl at the time who came up to me, like, I don't know, maybe a few months into dating. At the time, she said, like, I want to learn more about Catholicism. So we started going to the church more through after the youth group that I'd gone to. And I basically got way more into the faith after that point, when the youth group kind of started. So I kind of went for the wrong reasons, and then I went, kind of stayed for, I guess, the right reasons. And after that point, I got pretty devout, I suppose, in terms of, I was trying to go to daily mass, and I was like praying the Rosary every day. And I have, countless books of saints that some of them I've never read, and I've read a lot of them, but some of them just looked cool and I never read them. But now I feel kind of like at a vol or a null point, I suppose, of where I'm at now. I know I should probably be more devout. I don't know if that's just laziness that's gotten into me, but I didn't really grow up super devout, and I'm surprised that I kind of came back to the church. And I always like keep my fundamentals now of like the core principles that the church teaches. Like I said, even though I know I probably could be more devout, but I had a huge lapse. I've got 2 siblings, and they're not. One of them, I don't. My brother, I don't really know what he believes. He's kind of in this weird void as well, and I don't really know what he believes. My sister was, kind of the same boat as me. Came back to the church for a while, and then she met a Protestant who basically converted her to his faith, and then they broke up, and then now she's with someone new, and she believes in God and Christianity, things like that, but she doesn't consider herself Catholic anymore. She has we've talked about it. She has moral principles like with the church that she agree with, and I'm praying that maybe one day she'll come back to the church. But that's basically it, I guess.
What about this woman you married? How did that happen, and what's her faith journey been like, without going beyond what's appropriate to talk about her?
Oh yeah, sure. No, I'm pretty open about it. So my wife, we met actually on social media. I think she had we started talking on Twitter somehow, on a tweet maybe I made or she made, and we started talking. And she was actually kind of in a similar boat as me, where she, at the time, right when we started talking, I had gone through a breakup with a girl, and she had gone through a breakup with someone she was dating, and he was very, I don't know, I can't remember what denomination he was, Lutheran maybe, or Baptist, I can't remember, but we started talking, and like I said, I live in Tennessee, and she lived at the time in Maine, and she's from New Hampshire, but she was working in Maine, and we had been talking for probably 6 months, and started getting closer, like wanting to date each other. And she had come down. I had started my first real job at the time that I'm still with, and didn't have much vacation time built up, so she came down to visit me a few times, and she loved Tennessee, and she said, I'm tired of the liberals up here, and I'm tired of the cold. So she called me one day and said, hey, I got an apartment, and I'm moving there, and just kind of surprised me with it. And she moved down here, and we started dating, and she was Catholic, of course. And after, I don't know, probably a year and a half after that point, we got engaged in got married, and like we have a newborn son now who's 8 months old. So I guess it all worked out for the best, because now, like, the most fundamental part of my life, being faith and trying to keep that centered. Now that I've found someone like that, I don't, we don't argue, of course, about religion and beliefs, because it's the same. So we both
Mhm.
grew up actually pretty similar with, like, my faith, and the lapse and the time away that I was from the church. She actually had a similar time that she was away from the church through college and some of her early adult life, I guess. So
Mhm. Wow, that's amazing. So I don't know if you know, but I'm married to a non-Catholic, and we married civilly because I was an atheist at the time, and I still don't know what she is because she won't tell me. But she just hates religion. But she's slowly starting to warm up a little bit. I don't want to talk about her because she doesn't like when I talk about her. But she's slowly warming up to religion now that the COVID religion's taking over the world, and she's just like, no, this is a really crappy religion. Like, I think almost any other religion is better than the COVID religion. So she's starting to warm up a little bit to mainstream religions, traditional religions.
one good thing from it, I guess.
Yeah. So, what are you most excited about? Because when I listen to your story, you talk about, being raised Catholic and then maybe drifting and then getting excited again. But now, you have something very enviable, which is a family, a Catholic wife and a Catholic child, and you're going to raise the child in the faith. And this is one of the most exciting vocations for any human being. And so you've got the model of the Holy Family. So I would imagine that that is coming front and center into your top 10 list of things about Catholicism that excite you the most would be the Holy Family, education of children, spousal love, and openness to life, and all these sorts of things. But so you can talk about that, certainly, but there might be other little things that excite you. For example, I'm very excited about the sacrament of reconciliation or confession. I'm excited about indulgences. I'm excited about the lives of the saints. I'm excited about philosophy and theology. What are some of the things on your list, things that you're most excited about today?
Well, obviously, being Catholic, we've told ourselves, we're going to try and have as many kids as God wants us to have. I don't necessarily think I'm going to have 10 or 12 kids, but, we would like to have, of course, more. And, he just had his first baptism. It's probably been 3 or 4 months ago. And every time we've gone to the church for anything, whether it's been, like when we got married and when he had his baptism, um, to me, that just seeing him go through the sacraments and learning about the faith. And I remember well before we had him a few years ago. There's a local family, one of our churches that we went to, and kid, this kid was probably 2 years old maybe, and dad was holding him, and when you come in, there's the holy water, and you touch it and make sign of the cross as you enter the church. And he grabbed his son's hand to kind of teach him, like, I'm gonna do it. And then he grabbed his kid's hand, and the kid almost kind of like knew by that point, like he was learning how to, I guess it'd be little stuff like that, like showing him and my future kids, like how, what it means to be Catholic, and how important and how special it is, and getting to raise him and teach him the right things of how to be a man, and this is what it means to be Catholic. So I'm excited for that. And when he got baptized, and seeing him be baptized was pretty cool. So as he grows up, and as if I have more kids, as they grow up, just being able to teach them uh, about sacraments, and it's pretty exciting for me as the time comes, because it's already coming by. It feels like he was just born yesterday, and it'll be probably a quick minute before he has his next sacrament. But as he goes through CCD, and goes to the church for mass, it's always exciting when we get to take him. We go on on Sundays. Sometimes we go to the Saturday mass, but that's kind of what I'm most excited about, is raising them in the church, trying to be
Yeah.
a good for them.
Yeah. So often I speak with atheists. I don't know if you know that about me, but I interact with atheists quite a lot on my channel and just in general on the internet. And one of the things I like to emphasize is love. God is love, and love is necessarily to be given freely. We can't be hard determined robots and love. That's just absurd. It just doesn't work that way. So you, as a married man, you've been married for how long now?
This November will be 2 years.
Okay, so you're pretty much, I would say, in the honeymoon phase, I would say.
Yeah.
But compared to what's coming, no, sorry, I've been married 26 years, so I know sort of the terrain, what the landscape. There's some interesting stuff coming your way. But anyway, I'm sure you'll get through it a lot better than I did because you're both Catholic. But some bumps along the road. Some of the most exciting and most profitable times in my life were the bumpy parts, right? But the reason I'm talking about atheism to a Catholic is because you now have direct experience with the God who is love in a very tangible sense. Like you have a woman, and we all know how exciting women are
Oh yeah.
to us men, and how mysterious, right? And how dangerous and scary they can be. So, and unpredictable. And then you have a child. This is the fruit of your love. Like it's like the love keeps multiplying, and it's going to keep multiplying. I hope and pray that you have lots of healthy children. And those who aren't healthy, I hope you love them too. And they're going to be bring you a lot of joy if you have any that are less than perfectly healthy, which is normal. But anyway, this idea of the love that you're experiencing in a very pragmatic and concrete and sometimes messy way, I think is underappreciated by our secular culture. So I want to get your perspective on atheism and what sort of practical experience you have with love, marriage, intimacy. I mean, I don't want you to describe anything dirty, but
Yeah.
I want you to talk about the intimacy that you have with God as a result of being given the gift of the calling, the vocation to marriage and being a parent. Can you just sort of talk about that in a way that might be relevant to an atheist listener? Because I do have atheist listeners, and I don't think that they really get the God is love sort of thing and how practical and pragmatic it is. Can you just talk about that?
Yeah, I'll be honest. My encounters, I guess, when I used to have my social media, when I had my Instagram and my Twitter, I used to make a lot more theological posts, and I would encounter a lot of them. I'd make certain posts where it be pro life. That seemed to be like a really big trigger for atheists that would like to comment on my stuff. But when it comes into whether you believe in God or whether you don't believe in God, the area that I live in is even if it's not a very big Catholic area, it's a very big Christian area. My encounter in the real world with atheists is pretty limited in terms of deep conversation. But I've got three best friends, and one of them is one of the smartest guys I know, but he's also one of the dumbest guys I know because he doesn't openly say he's an atheist. I don't really know what if he's agnostic or what he believes in. He sometimes says he believes in a higher power, but says we also, we can't prove it, but can't disprove it according to him. And we've had these deep conversations that honestly end up with me probably getting more mad than I should at him over me saying, you're one of the smartest guys I know. I don't know how you cannot believe in God, but I do know, my kind of take on it is, two things is, it might not be the most theological approach or scientific approach, which, from my experience, atheists really, really like science. And I think it's ironic because I do believe the church throughout the course of history has had some of the smartest scientists to ever live that have come up, like I know the Big Bang Theory was, it was from a Catholic, and there's just so many things the church has provided towards science. And they have proven that science can go hand in hand with religion and belief in God. But the way I see it is that there are no atheists in foxholes. I think ultimately atheists, like to, they want to think that there's no God, but I think deep down, really deep down in the secret, in the depth of their heart, when they're laying down at night, I do think it's hard for people to really tell themselves there's nothing else out there. There's no higher power. There's no God. I do think for some, like I said, in the deepest secrets of their heart, they believe that God is real. But, like I said, I don't have a huge encounter with people. But I don't know if you've ever seen the movie. Me and my wife really like to watch horror movies, and there's a horror movie called The Rite, and it's got I think Anthony Hopkins is he plays a priest, and it's supposed to be based on a true story, not like to the T true, but it's the actual concept of it is supposed to be based on a true story, from my knowledge. It's been a while since I've seen it, but basically it's about a priest who, in his family, you either become a mortician or you join the priesthood. It's kind of like one of those families, like military families. You either join the military or you don't. And that was, his lineage, his family history was you join the priesthood or you join the family business, which is become a mortician. And he decides to join the priesthood because his mother died very young and his father was a mortician, and I guess he didn't want to go that route. But he goes to seminary school and he goes to Rome, and he is in his I don't know exactly how it works for priests in terms of, I know their education generally, but he was about to take his final vows, and he had I guess a lapse in faith, and he had written this letter to whoever it is he wanted to submit his letter to say, listen, I don't think, I've had this lapse in faith. I don't think I want to take my final vows. And one of the priests, I guess that was, over the program or that knew him, sat him down. And I actually would like to know if this was true or not. I've never researched this, but the priest said, if you don't want to take your final vows, that's fine. But the church has the right to turn all of your education into a debt, and you're going to have to owe us that money back. So he said, I'm going to do one last thing to try to convince you that God is real. So he sends him to Anthony Hopkins, who is a priest in Rome there, and he is an exorcist priest. And that's kind of how the movie takes off. And I won't give too much away if nobody's seen it and wants to know more. But he goes to Anthony Hopkins for his first visit, and Anthony Hopkins has a girl there who he's performing an exorcism on. She's a young Italian girl, and she's pregnant, and she's with her mother, and she's a teenager. And he does this exorcism with her, and the girl he's doing the exorcism on does several things. She has knowledge of things that are unknown. She speaks a completely different language. She throws up, I believe, 3 nails during the process, and the young priest, kind of at the end of it, is just coming up with excuses, saying, well, this could have been the cause for that, and she's probably mentally ill, et cetera, just coming up with every excuse to say this is not religion, this is not God or the devil, this is just basically witchcraft. And Anthony Hopkins kind of has like a response to it where, he says, talking about, I guess, like faith, and talking about like atheists, and he, basically says that atheists, they're always trying to find proof, but what would they do if they ever found it? Would it really ever convince them? If God came down right in front of them, would they ever be really convinced even at that point? So, but he talks about his own faith, and says that sometimes he even as a priest has lapses in his faith where sometimes even he doesn't know what he believes in. He goes, the only way he knows how to describe it is it's kind of like God's fingernail, where he goes days, weeks, or months of not knowing what to believe, but it's always this little scratching fingernail in the back of his head, and then from one moment he's pushed out from the darkness and into the light, and he just calls it God's fingernail because he doesn't know what else to call it. So my experience with atheists, like I said, it's pretty low, but with one of my best friends claiming, I would just essentially call him an atheist with the conversations we've had of him not knowing what he really believes in.
When you talked about that movie, I haven't seen it. I'm not a fan of movies generally, or especially of horror, but it sounds interesting. I might check it out. But it made me think about an Italian or Spanish bishop. I think he's a bishop and an exorcist, and it was a news item that I stumbled upon. I don't read the news, but somehow this got on my radar, where this exorcist, Catholic exorcist, who is renowned for being one of the youngest priests to be ordained bishop, he ended up consulting with this Satanist in order to learn more about demonology, and she writes pornographic books about satanic sexual perversion. And they met and they had their consultations. One thing led to another, and then he renounced the church, and he's in love with her, and he's devoted his life to this satanic woman. So How does that story strike you as a young Catholic man?
That's kind of sickening, actually, to listen or to hear that. I suppose it's not unheard of for priests to. I think people have this idea that priests are holier than everyone else and can do no harm, but ultimately they're people just like us, and they commit sins, and I do feel like if a priest had gotten to the point where he wanted to consult with that person, I wouldn't consider that necessarily strange if his specific area of expertise might be like exorcism and to maybe learn more. But I do feel like there was something maybe prior to the meeting that maybe I feel like it'd be hard for a priest in good standing faith to all of a sudden just leave the church and the faith and now claim he's a Satanist and is with this woman. Whether I suppose it wouldn't be impossible, but I feel like there probably was maybe some stuff going on before then that led him to that point to be interested. Whether it just be, I wouldn't necessarily say lying about his vows and wanting to be a priest if you've gone through all that trouble to get to that point, but I feel like it's kind of odd for a priest just to go do that. And it must have been some extreme temptation in that sense, I guess,
Mm.
if he had just abandoned the faith and he's now with a Satanist. But
Mm.
uh, I think ultimately they're people just like us, and you can only pray for his conversion to come back and denounce what he's done. I mean, I don't know
Yeah.
what else we really do for someone like that at that point.
Yeah.
Um, but
What do you think about? I mean, I'm just freestyling here, but since we're on the topic, it's a bit dark. But what do you think about the fact that sadly, there are priests, maybe even priests that that you've met, that you've received the sacraments from, who are unrepentant masturbators, unrepentant consumers of pornography, prostitution, homosexual stuff? Like, I mean, how do you feel about that? Are you able to just say, well, the holiness of the priest doesn't affect the validity of the sacraments, and just that's good enough for you? Or is there a palpable disgust where you would want to avoid someone if you discovered that is actually the case? Or where do you fall on that issue?
um, well, I suppose it depends on is it something they struggle with and are truly repentant for? If it's funny you say that. I was watching a video. And I can't remember the name of the priest off the top of my head. I think he's dead now. He was really known for his speeches and a Catholic inspirational video. It's one of the top videos, and he talks about later in his speech. He talks about he's like, I've had numerous priests come to me over the course of history that have been addicted to alcohol, that have been addicted to pornography, that have had all kinds of sin, and they're in kind of constant mortal sin. He's like, basically his message is to just resist. It doesn't matter, just keep resisting. And if someone is struggling with something, a priest or otherwise, if they were an alcoholic or pornography or whatever it is they struggle with, and they were repentant and they were consistent with trying to remain on the path and overcome their chains to that addiction or slavery, because I do feel like we've all got something, whatever it is, we all have a problem we struggle with, um, big or small. Then I suppose that's not going to affect my view on that priest. If they were completely unrepentant and just did it at free will, and didn't care because they were a priest, and thought that of course I would have a problem with that. And if I openly knew that, I would not seek to go to that priest for confession or communion and etc. I probably wouldn't even want to be around that priest for someone that was completely unrepentant. They probably shouldn't even be a priest, honestly, but I don't get to make that call. But I
Yeah.
think that they're humans. They sin, they struggle just like we do, and they need our prayers. And I think all too often people forget that we need to pray for our priests. They are, if I was the devil, that's going to be one of my most, they bring us the sacraments, they bring us, the Eucharist and confession and the ability to come back to God, and they are the first line into the church, in my opinion. So if I was the devil, I'm going to want to attack them, as hard as I can to make that image, because it's like anyone in a position of power. If you hear about, you know, any kind of employee from a company, and I won't use any company specifically, but you know, any company, doesn't matter, and you hear that, you know, oh, this person, you know, stole from the company, or this person sexually assaulted someone within the company, you know, depending on the circumstance, may or may not make the news, may or may be gossiped about among coworkers, and then after that, it's kind of gone. But if you hear about a local priest, you know, in the news about touching, you know, a child, which, you know, the church has obviously had issues with, or if you heard about a priest that had an alcohol addiction and was driving his car and got a DUI or something like that, you know, you hear about some event like that, it's going to make the news. Everyone's going to talk about it, and especially if it's anything sexual related, you know, oh, you know, all priests are pedophiles, we told you, etc. I mean, every time an event comes out, that's what everybody says, right? So, you know, it makes the church look bad, it makes us look bad, it makes, you know, but you know, that's, like I said, if I was the devil, that's back. And you know, we all struggle with something, and if it's a priest that struggles with something, then you know, I'm going to pray for them, as long as they're repentant and are trying to constantly fix it and stay on the path. It's not going to change my view of them still doing God's work, because they're still human. So
Yeah. What about on a more cheery note? Have you got a favorite story about confession, or about a good holy priest that you had a good interaction with, or anything like that? Just sort of a positive story.
oh yeah, one of my favorite stories is my local priest. I love him to death, but one of my favorite stories is not him. It's about a separate priest who is now, he's retired, and he's Irish, and you know, he's of course got his nice Irish accent, which I actually wish I had. And I remember at the time I had just gotten done with a portion of my training for the job that I'm in, and I was applying to uh, the job that I wanted after receiving my training. And I was, you know, super stressed out. And this was, I think I was probably 20 or 21 at this time. I can't remember, but super stressed out, and wanted this job so bad. And my sister lived in an adjacent city to me, and she used to travel to California for work. And when she would travel, she would have me come to her house. And just 10 minutes down the road from her house was, you know, a Catholic church. And they have a running track, and some weights and stuff outside you can go to, that they had built. And I was going there for a run, and I had been to this church several times, and this specific priest, I always loved his homilies. You know, you always have, you know, you're a certain priest or two that they just always give good homilies, and I'd always thought his homilies were really good, and they always felt to connect with me. So I had got done with my run, and I had seen him walking from the church over to an adjacent building there on the grounds. And he came up to me, and he starts talking to me, and he's like, you know, what are you running for? You're training, you look in great shape. And I'm talking to him, and I had spilled my guts about everything I was going through, that did this like 5-minute spiel. And he just looks at me, and he just pats me on the shoulder, and he says, everything's going to be okay. And he just walks away. And I was like, man, that's just the biggest crock I've ever heard. Like, anybody could tell that to me. And I was like, I was figuring you'd give me some deep speech. And then as soon as I got home, I got a call from this job saying, hey, do you want the job? And I said, absolutely. So as soon as they called me and told me that, he was the first person that I had thought about, actually. Like, he went through my head. So that's one of my favorite memories, I guess, about a priest was that experience. And you know, I've had several experiences as well outside of that, but that seems to ring a bell with me if I was thinking about something.
Yeah, that's just the simplicity and the naturalness of God is deceptive, right? Because we think about Hollywood, okay, we need some special effects, we need the lighting, we need the lightning and the sound effects, and we need the explosions, and we need a big budget for this scene because it's God Almighty, right?
Yep.
But no, it's the whispering wind, isn't it? In which prophet is that? Do you remember that from the Bible?
Oh, of course I do. Let me.
Is that Ezekiel? Let me Google it.
Yeah, I was like, Todd, you're gonna have to dumb a lot of stuff down. I haven't been through the Bible.
Might have been Ezekiel. Are you Googling it?
Oh no, sorry.
I'm
I'll
waiting
take
for you to Google it.
I'll take your word for it.
Okay.
I had an Alexis or a Siri. I might ask him or something.
So, what about confession? Can you talk to my non-Catholic Christian friends about confession? Why do they explain to them what they're missing? Because they have no idea what they're missing. They have absolutely no idea what they are missing with confession. They think they understand what confession is, but you have done confession. So, what is it? What is it about confession that is bigger and better and more deep and powerful than what the non-Catholic Christians might think about confession? Can you just talk about that?
Yeah, confession is actually my favorite sin. A lot of Catholics really hate it and don't go years, and I don't go as much as I should. I confess, but it is actually my favorite confession. And I've had this talk with a lot of people, non-Catholic friends, and specifically, actually one of the girls that I dated, who, of course, before I met my wife, was not Catholic, and the conversation essentially that we had was, she's like, well, I do confess my sins. I just don't do it to a priest. Am I not forgiven? Well, and I said, well, it's a little more. It's not as complicated, but it is more complicated than that. I'm not saying that you're not forgiven, but I guess what I really like about confession is that there's no more hiding from it. You can sit there all day, in your house, and say, God forgive me. And like I said, I ultimately, I'm not going to say whether that person is or is not forgiven if they made that confession to God and you know did their best to avoid that sin and not do it again. But as Catholics, obviously, we believe we have to excuse me, go and see a priest. But um, I suppose when I'm sitting there in confession and something's been building up and you haven't been in a while, and you verbally release what you're saying, it feels like Jesus is there with the priest, and there's no more hiding from it. It's out in the open. It's almost like just say what you have to say and get it out. And it's such a feeling of relief, knowing that there's no more hiding from this, because I know that I can sit here in my house and say, I'm not going to do that again, and then I can do it again, and it's just like, oh well, I'll just tell God, okay, I'm sorry, I won't do it again. But when you have to physically confront your sin with the priest, and you have to sit there in that confessional and know, hey, this is real. There's no more trying to cover this up. I suppose it's such a feeling of relief, and especially for those. And I think if you're Catholic, you really know when you maybe have been avoiding something, or you haven't gone to confession in a long time. The feeling, it's really hard to explain. And I suppose when I had just started getting back into my faith, right around the time, I suppose, when I was, like I said, when I was 18, right after going to the youth group that I was in, when I really started getting more into the faith, I had not been to confession at that point in probably several years. And I had the feeling that I had gotten to, and that's essentially was my first confession since like I said, several years. So I considered it one of my first confessions, honestly, when I think about it. And just the feeling of releasing all of that, it's really hard to explain. It's almost something you have to experience for yourself. Like I said, if someone wasn't Catholic and you know disagrees with that, or says, well, I feel just as nice verbally saying it, or praying in my head and asking for forgiveness. I'm not God. I'm not here to say whether or not you are or are not forgiven. I would hope that you are, but I just think it's an experience you have to actually do and be a part of to really understand. It's kind of like taking the Eucharist. Like I can't explain it. I can tell you what it is and you can see it, but when you go through the process of trying to join the church, be Catholic, and then you take your first, you do your first confession, and you receive the Eucharist for the first time. It's just something you have to experience to really understand the full grasp of it, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I forget who said it, but someone said you're only as sick, like only as mentally ill as your biggest secret. So there's a psychological aspect. I mean, God is not stupid. He created nature, he created humans, he created human nature, and he created all of the psychological components that are valid and real that make up a human being in their psyche. So there is obviously going to be a psychological component to prayer, the sacraments, community life, the virtues, and diet, exercise, the whole thing, right? There's a psychological aspect to everything because God made us to be beings that have a psychological component. So we can't just say, well, that's you're ceding ground now to the secular sciences by saying that there's a psychological component. No, well, there's also a physical health component. You go to confession, your physical health improves. I mean, maybe marginally, maybe not at all, maybe greatly. Like it's like the last rites or the viaticum, whatever they call it, when you're in danger of dying because you're so sick or you're so old. The priest comes and you've had your confession and the Eucharist, and then you're anointed. And with that, often comes physical health, right, and healing. And but even if there is no visible physical healing, there is always a spiritual benefit. So it's not either or, it's both. And we can have a psychological benefit and a physical benefit and a spiritual benefit and an emotional benefit and every other kind of benefit. That's just the way God is in his generosity. He is aware of our human nature in all of its aspects. And so we shouldn't be shy to admit that there's a psychological aspect, even to exorcism, right? And we were talking about exorcism earlier. Like, I mean, there are psychological illnesses. The church is well aware of that. The church makes as a prerequisite to a major exorcism, there is, of course, a psychological evaluation. And the same thing with the seers that are part of alleged apparitions, Marian apparitions or any other apparitions. There's a psychological evaluation that takes place, right? So speaking of apparitions, are you excited about any particular Marian apparitions? Like, for example, Guadalupe, Our Lady of Lourdes, Our Lady of Fatima. Are there any that excite you? And what do you have to say about that whole realm of Catholicism?
My knowledge of those events is extremely little. I gotta confess, I don't know a whole lot about them. I know the basics. Guadalupe with the children and Fatima and some of the others. But my knowledge on those is very little, I suppose.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I believe in them, of course. Being Catholic. But I guess my knowledge of those is pretty limited to give give us.
Yeah. Not a problem. But what about the just your devotion to Mary generally? I mean, obviously you've heard about the Blessed Virgin Mary, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Kidding.
Got a tattoo over here on my arm. Actually,
can you show us?
Yes, I got this just a few weeks ago. It's still healing, but
wow.
I'm trying to get back. I used to. This might be a little shiny. I've got some lotion on it, but I know this is terrible to say. I used to pray the Rosary every day, and me and my wife were talking. She's like, "We need to pray the Rosary together, like every day, like starting." And I was like, "Yeah, I know. I need to get back into that because I was generally I don't know which priest said it, but the priest is when I used to post a lot of course quotes on my social media. But the quote this priest basically said when you pray the Rosary continually, you're either going to quit that sin that you're committing, or you're going to stop praying the Rosary. And from my experience, it's like, yeah, I was good for it for a while, and then you give into sin, and I feel like it's a pretty accurate statement. You're either going to stop praying the Rosary or going to continue that sin. It's if you keep praying that Rosary, that sin you're going to overcome that with the help of the Blessed Mother. So, but yeah, like I said, my knowledge of those in detail, at least enough to talk about them, is pretty. I guess limited. I probably need to know more about that.
Right. No. But let's talk a little bit about the Rosary so I can get you pumped up about it, and you and your wife can start doing the daily Rosary together. And
Yeah.
that's going to help Samuel too, because that's really important for Samuel to be exposed to that. So what are the mysteries that you're most drawn to? Let's put it that way.
Well, let's see. What are the five? Is it joyful? You're gonna have to help me out here. I can't remember now.
Yeah,
No.
joyful, luminous, sorrowful, and glorious. Okay, you want me to walk you through all 20? Like just briefly?
Maybe, yeah, refresh my memory so that
Okay.
I.
So the joyful mysteries, you got the Annunciation, the Visitation, the Nativity, the Presentation, the finding of the child Jesus in the temple. The luminous mysteries, you got the baptism of our Lord, the miracle at Cana, the proclamation of the kingdom, the transfiguration, and the institution of the Eucharist. And then you got the sorrowful mysteries. You got the agony in the garden, the scourging at the pillar, crowning with thorns, the carrying of the cross, and the crucifixion. And then the glorious mysteries, you have the resurrection of our Lord, his ascension into heaven, the descent of the Holy Spirit, the Assumption of Mary, and her coronation in heaven.
I feel like I've always had kind of a drawing, I suppose, to the sorrowful, because I do think, as Catholic Christians, I think we're called to suffering. I think everybody wants to have a nice life, and I think for a lot of people, you can. I've got a pretty, I suppose, nice life compared to a lot of people, but I do feel like I've always had. I don't know what they call it. If it's called like a Catholic guilt, maybe. I'm sure maybe you've heard that before, where Catholics always feel like they have to go to confession, and they always feel like guilty about things that they do. But when it comes to like the suffering of the Christian life, I feel like I've always had like a drawing where if you're doing, like, for example, like the joyful mysteries, and it's all things that are very happy. It's easy to be a Christian when everything goes the right way. It's hard to be a Christian when everything goes the wrong way. So I suppose if I kind of like mentally prepare myself, then I'm always going to be suffering. In the case where you have, good things that are happening to you, it's kind of like, I guess, a blessing. So I feel like I've always kind of like, I suppose, now that you've refreshed my memory, some of the sorrowful side versus maybe, the joyous side of when I did the Rosary, when I used to, because when I used to go on Saturday to the Saturday Mass, and I would always be one of the persons that would say, one of the decades. So I always kind of enjoyed the reflection of the sorrowful side, the suffering, I guess, of Jesus. So
Yeah. I'm right there with you. I agree. The reason in my own journey, my faith journey as a Catholic, I've only been Catholic since 2009, but in my own journey, suffering, it's not that I've suffered a lot, but Jesus Christ suffered a lot, and the saints have suffered a lot. Okay. So I'm drawn to the sorrowful mysteries, and I'm drawn to the concept of suffering having meaningful suffering, because we're all going to suffer whether we like it or not. But is your suffering going to be united to the sufferings of Christ? Are your sufferings going to be meaningful and valuable and salutary and salvific? I mean, this is like, I just think about it as like free money, like free graces, free indulgences, free blessings, and it's just like, if everyone on earth in this worldly world that we inhabit, this fallen world, if everyone is chasing after fame and fortune and power and sex and drugs and rock and roll, no one is going to be attacking this massive treasure trove of suffering, right? It's like, it's the devout Catholics that are going to have it all to ourselves, right? Like, there's more than enough suffering to go around. And it's the most valuable thing in the universe, but people just don't realize that. They think that it's fame, fortune, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. So it's like this hidden treasure, and we are able, because we can't avoid suffering, so we may as well use it as a currency to get to heaven and to help others get to heaven, and to be instrumental in bringing the actual graces of God to conversion for ourselves, conversion for our loved ones, conversion for our acquaintances, for our enemies. And it's just a great untapped resource. The other reason that I like the sorrowful mysteries is just because I personally have caused, I'm well aware of the fact that I have caused, and I am causing, and I probably will continue to cause a great deal of suffering to our Lord and Savior, the God-man Jesus Christ. So it's a very palpable, real thing that is tangible. It's like I'm participating in that. It's like I'm part of salvation history in a very dramatic way, because as Jesus is suffering in the garden, or being scourged, or being crowned with thorns, or carrying the cross and the wound on his shoulder, or the actual crucifixion itself, all of that, I'm a big player in that, not as a hero, but as a villain, right? I'm like making him suffer through all of that because of my sins. So I find it a very, very intimate situation where it's like I am there with him, and I have the opportunity now to say, I'm sorry, Jesus. I'm sincerely sorry for all the suffering that I've caused you, not only in the past before I was a Catholic, but what's even worse, now that I'm a believer and I know what I'm doing, and I still choose freely of my own free will to commit venial sin. I'm so sorry for that. Can you please help me? And it's a very humbling thing to confront.
Yeah, absolutely.
So where do we go from here? What have we covered? What have we not covered? We've got about 10 minutes left in our hour here. So what other aspects of being a Catholic do you think my non-Catholic guests and my atheist guests would most benefit from hearing from you, Nathan, today?
Oh gosh, put me on the spot. Let me think. That's. I wish I could give a solid answer for that.
Okay, let me try another one on you here. I know you don't like being put on the spot, but I'll do it anyway. If I were to say to you, you don't know me very well, right? But if I were to say to you, we just met, we're both Catholic, okay?
Yeah.
You don't know what I get up to. You don't know my faith, the ups and downs of my faith and how I abuse Christ by sinning. But if I just asked you 3 things that you can suggest to me that would help me to become a better Catholic, what would those 3 things be? It could be anything, but you're pretty sure that if you could get me to do these 3 things, it would help me, even though you don't know me and you don't know what my strengths and weaknesses are. But if I could do these 3 things, I would definitely become a better Catholic. What would those 3 things be?
Let's say stop. No, I was going to say stop.
Stop what?
I was going to say stop sinning, which everyone would like to do, but of course that's just a joke. Well, I can only really play it off, my experiences. I feel like the things that have helped me that I feel like are kind of universal is I would stay close to confession. That's always generally helped me. I realized that when I stray far from confession, when I tend to stay far away from the church, my mood, my demeanor, my personality tends to change. I feel like I kind of morph into the sin that I'm committing, the further away that I am from God and from confession. So I would recommend staying close to confession. I would recommend staying close to the Rosary and to the Blessed Mother. The hardest times that I've gone through, like you said just before, even when what you're doing is wrong and you have the knowledge of the faith, but yet you still do it. You still do it. I know that I should be praying the Rosary as much as I can, whether it be daily or otherwise, and yet I still don't, right? Or don't do it as much as I should, at least.
There's no sin attached to that, by the way.
Yeah, I try not. Well, in terms of doing helping me with my sins,
okay.
That's been extremely helpful. So yeah, of course, there's no Catholic wrong for not doing it, but I think that you should do it as much as you can, at least daily. That's, like I said, I used to do it daily, and at the time that helped me significantly with the things that I went through. But confession, Rosary, I understand that going to daily mass is I wouldn't say unobtainable for most people, but it's pretty unrealistic for a lot of people that have full-time jobs and children, and just pure laziness. So that man is lazy, so it's unobtainable for most people. But when I used to be able to go to, I would at least try to go to mass more than once a week. I feel like when you receive the Eucharist and you're in a state of a clean bill of health, after you go to confession, I suppose, that's like my spiritual food for the week, is when I go and receive the Eucharist. So if it's possible, maybe try to find some time throughout the week to maybe go to mass an extra time if you can, to kind of help you in between the work week and stresses. So those are three things that I think can help a lot of people if you do have the ability, of course, to do those.
Excellent. That's amazing. That's amazing advice and very Catholic advice. And I have to say, you're not the first one to give those three exact pieces of advice because they are so universally prominent in terms of church teaching and guidance and how to be, how to strive for holiness and how to be a good child of the church. One last thing before I let you go, we've got about 4 minutes left. Like I joked earlier, there's this new religion that's sweeping the world, this COVID nonsense. I don't know what it is. I'm making no claims about the virus, about the vaccines. I'm making no scientific claims whatsoever. Could be the worst disease that was ever that it arose naturally, and the vaccines could be the best thing that humans have ever invented. I'm making no claim whatsoever. But there's a sickness, there's a satanic worldliness attached to this. Okay, so I want you to talk to me. I don't know what your opinions are. I have no idea what your opinions are. You may be the most pro-COVID, pro-vaccine person I've ever met, but still, you're a Catholic, right?
Yeah.
And you're living in Tennessee, so that gives me a little hint. But what would you say to people that are suffering because of sort of depression, suicidal tendencies, alcoholism, addictions, domestic problems, with lockdowns, loss of business, a positive message, something that is uniquely and specifically Catholic advice to these people as human beings that may have no religion or they may have some religion you've never heard of. But what would you say to them, whether they're completely on the left or completely on the right or somewhere in between? What would you say to them from human being to human being, but given the fact that you're Catholic, what would you say to them how to deal with this crazy, crazy time that we're going through?
Oh man, I remember when the COVID thing, was first right at the height of it, last year in 2020. And my priest had given a homily about COVID, and this was. And I don't want to sound, like you said, I'm from Tennessee. Our view on it here is pretty, I suppose, conservative. I've got pretty strong views on the COVID thing outside of the spiritual side politically, but there's gonna there's gonna be a light at the end of the tunnel ultimately, and I do think like the media, not to talk too much about the political side of it, but I feel like there's been a lot of fear mongering among people to instill this fear, of COVID and that everyone's going to die, and if you don't get the shot, and businesses, people have lost their businesses, and people, like you said, have, whether it be via lockdown. I know you said you're from Canada. I know they've had a lot of lockdowns there compared to here, still ongoing to my knowledge, and you can only keep people inside for so long before it is going to mentally affect you, and that's very hard. But and I'm very lucky in a sense to be where I'm at, where it's pretty relatively low on that side. We didn't deal with that for a whole lot, but we still did go through it, and there's people in the community that I feel like everybody was stressed about it for the longest time. But there's going to be a light at the end of the tunnel. This is going to end. Nothing is forever. I have a poster here in my house. My wife actually got it for me, but the world, it's just our ship. Nothing in this life is going to last forever, and I can only say that I hope that I meet everyone that listens to this in heaven someday. But this world, it's our ship, it's not our home, and I can only pray that whether someone has a hard time with this or not, whether it be like you said, suicidal tendencies or substance abuse issues or whatever else it might be, none of this is going to last forever. So ultimately, if it got to someone so bad, I can only hope that one day that we can get to heaven together, and where there's none of this. So
keep your eyes on the prize, people. I think that's the bottom line, right? Keep your eyes on the prize. But what if you don't have a worldview that gives you meaning or gives you an afterlife or gives you God? I think that's the real struggle for a lot of people in this secular world. I can tell you in my family and among my friends, it is the exception, not the rule. I don't live in the Bible Belt. I live in the most left-wing part of a very left-wing country. I live in Quebec, Montreal, Quebec. So it's a very, very, very progressive place to be. And I don't know how to bring people to God. I've certainly been trying on my podcast. It hasn't really yielded any results that I'm aware of. Maybe one or two people that have reached out and said, "Hey, you've helped me a little bit here and there." But I guess prayer in the sacraments. And if you, Nathan, you and I can be faithful and good sons of the church, then I guess there's a trickle down effect, and we can be instruments of God's grace, right? So.
Yeah, that's yep. Jesus Christ was one person. Yeah, he was the Son of God, but he was one person. He changed the course of history for mankind forever. So I think whether you might he only maybe that of a few people have reached out to you and told you, but you might have reached a lot more that haven't told you. So I do believe one person can make a difference, and sometimes it just takes maybe one podcast or one video to, I wouldn't necessarily say go viral, but you might reach a lot more people than you think. I know when I had my social media, and like I said, I had quite a few followers for a time, but I had people reach out to me even in the early stages that would tell me, "Hey, you've prayed for me, or this post really relates to me," or whatever. So I don't know about the people that I don't know how people live without faith. I've had a large spurt of it, like I said, where I didn't have it, but I've never had a true long-term belief that there was no God. And I don't know how people live without not believing in God, because I've never experienced that. I don't know how someone could believe that. I just, I suppose I'm blessed to have always kind of had a belief in God, and to understand, for the most part, who and what God is, and to have core beliefs about the faith, and to always try to remain close to God, and to stay on the path. And, for people that don't believe and don't have that spiritual help for them, unfortunately, I don't know what to say to someone like that. That's hard mentally, in my opinion, just because you're already at a loss. You're already behind. You're already, behind the race, in my opinion, compared to maybe someone that does believe. And that might not be the best answer to.
Yeah, well, the first will be last, and the last will be first. So maybe they'll be coming at the 11th hour, right?
Yeah, could be right. That's also true.
One last thing before I let you go. I'm saying this not to boast or to brag, but I make a donation, and I get a perpetual mass for each of my guests. So you're getting a mass set for you and yours every day till the end of time. That includes your stay in purgatory, if God forbid you end up in purgatory. Okay, so you, your wife, your parents, you're gonna benefit from this mass. I enrolled you and your family into the Fathers of St. Charles Borromeo and the Scalabrinian League. It's an outfit in Chicago, and they help with migrants, immigrants. That's their charism. They're a Catholic group of nuns, well, not nuns, but monks and nuns, sisters and brothers worldwide. They're not a large group, but I just hope that you know that you're going to be receiving those graces every day, and they can be powerful. You can be an instrument of grace to those around you because of that. And another reason I'm mentioning this is because if there's anyone listening to this that was hesitating, like, oh, should I accept David's invitation to come and chat on his podcast? I don't know what to say. I don't have much to say, or whatever. Well, a good reason to come on and chat with me is because you get a perpetual mass, right? That's a good reason. So I'm just sort of plugging my live guest module here, because I don't get a lot of guests, especially recently, because I took a large break when COVID started, and I don't get a lot of guests, so I'm hoping to give a little incentive. The other thing I wanted to mention about your wife, since I mentioned her, that she benefits from this mass, is I would like to talk to her. I'd like to have her on the live stream and get her side of the coin, talk to her and get her perspective. Not only because now that I've met you, but because she's your better half. She's like the mysterious alter ego. Like, she's connected to you. You are one flesh. And it's always fascinating to meet the complete person by meeting the spouse of the person. You see what I mean? Like, if you were to meet my wife, you would have a completely different perspective on me. You it would more than double your appreciation of who I am as a person, because she is something else. Okay, so that's often the case. It's a mystery. It's a very deep mystery. Just like Christ and his bride, the church, that's a deep mystery, as St. Paul says, right? So you think you could pass along that invitation to her?
Absolutely. I'm sure she would not have an issue at all. You just you let me know. You've got my information, and I'm sure she would love to come on and
Cool.
chat.
Email me. We'll do it. If she's free next weekend, we'll do it next weekend. If she's not free next weekend, we'll do it any weekend after that, okay?
Yeah, I'm sure we can find some time. Absolutely.
And schedule Samuel for 16 years from now. We'll do his.
Yeah, we'll put it on the calendar.
Okay. Great talking to you. Really nice meeting you. You're a fine young chap. And definitely have you back again if ever you feel like coming back on, okay?
Sure. I appreciate you having me on, and I'll keep you in my prayers as well. And we'll talk soon.
For sure. Thanks a lot. And take care of yourself and your family there, okay?
All right. Thank you. Do the same.
God bless.
All right, God bless. Bye.
Bye.